Hey there, welcome back to the Design Lab. Another zany episode of the Design Lab. All right, I've been gone a week. You didn't even notice because I didn't miss a beat. I recorded ahead. So, anyways, what am I looking at today? It's Tales to Astonish number 49. First appearance of Giant Man, formerly known as Ant-Man, but then he realized that he can change size the other direction instead of just getting shrinking. So, let's take a look. I think the reason I've been reading through the Marvel comics, I'm at the end of 1963 right now, and this is one of the last, November 1963. And I kind of picked this one. I've just kind of been picking random issues as I go along because the art was kind of interesting. This cover, you'll notice, is signed Don Heck, and I was surprised by that because I looked at this, I thought, oh, that's a Jack Kirby cover. It looks, I mean, the way Giant Man looks very Kirby-esque. I thought it looked better than Don Heck's usual art. And then inside, I was kind of surprised too because it says drawn by Jack Kirby, inking by Don Heck. So my impression of this issue is that Kirby, like as I've mentioned in other videos, was working as much as he could. Like they were giving him so much work, and he was just basically plowing through the pages, probably doing a few pages a day at least. And this one, I'm guessing he did the layouts for and maybe started doing some of the finishing, but I'm guessing if he ran out of time, some of it he just handed off and Don Heck finished. But that doesn't really explain why Don Heck's signature is on this cover. But again, this could be just maybe Kirby did a quick layout and then Don Heck kind of finished it. I don't know. But this character design looks very Kirby-esque to me. That repeating jaw thing that he does, and just everything about it looks Kirby-esque, the nature of it. But like I said, Don Heck's art is on the signature is on the cover, and I think Kirby kind of, I haven't looked ahead, but I think from this issue on, he's kind of making a return to this title for whatever reason. And yeah, so let's take a look. I found this issue kind of like some of the panels are like this, which don't really do anything for me. It's kind of like whatever. But then this looks more Kirby-esque. The fabric and the way that it's wrinkled, and just the overall shape of this character. And like for example, this glove looks very Kirby-esque. I don't know. Like you just kind of recognize Kirby trademarks after a while when you've read enough. But anyways, back to the story. Giant Man messed up and made himself large, and I don't know. So they fight crime, etc. I just kind of want to look at a few of the panels because as I was looking through this, I thought like if I had to guess what year this art was from, I would guess the 1980s, not 1963. So I think in that sense, it's very ahead of its time. This looks to me like John Byrne. Like I thought this panel looks so John Byrne to me, and not Kirby-esque at all. So I think maybe Don Heck's influence, I don't know. But and then this panel is the one that kind of like, whoa, I thought, where did this come from? This is out of nowhere. This whole angle, I mean, you're not going to see anything like this, I don't think, in Don Heck, looking over a character's shoulder with this level of shadow and kind of this frame around it. It's really well done. So I think Kirby did this. I mean, this hand looks very Kirby. I mean, it looks almost like Frank Miller, this kind of inking. So I think I pointed it out in some of Steve Ditko's art, but I think both Ditko and Miller, I mean, Ditko and Kirby are a big influence on Miller, obviously. And then this page, again, looks very 1980s to me. I don't know if it's the coloring, because I think this is a recolored version from Marvel Masterworks or something that I downloaded this from, but it doesn't look quite like Kirby. It doesn't look quite like Don Heck. But I've seen actually this sequence of 3 panels. Kirby does this a lot in 1963 and thereabouts. He'll do an action and break into 3 panels, and each one is very similar, but it seems to be something he does quite a bit. Anyway, there's this guy who looks like the Skrulls or whatever they're called. There's just so many times in Marvel Comics in the early 60s where they just repeat the same plots in which scientists get kidnapped and then, Reed Richards or Peter Parker or, some scientist, Ant-Man is kidnapped as well and he saves them and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I thought the inking was, I mean, look at some of this is very uncharacteristic inking for a Kirby. I pointed out before, I don't think at this point Kirby had quite found or had been regularly working with his best inkers, Mike Royer, later on Joe Sinnott. He'd worked with Joe Sinnott, but not extensively at this point. Just I think one issue of Fantastic Four. So this kind of line work is just very opposite to what I think serves Kirby's art best, which is a heavier line instead of emphasizing these really thin lines. Some of this, when you start working with these thin lines, you get almost like a Gil Kane look to the art. But again, look at the fabric. This is so Kirby. All these huge blots of ink in the fabric, and it starts to look good. And in the background, you start to see, Kirby things like this, the bubbles and machinery, Kirby-esque machinery, which just gets more and more elaborate and baroque as the 60s progress. I think I'm just kind of pointing out a few of the panels. This panel I thought was really well done. And again, this doesn't strike me as very Kirby in this. I mean, actually the aliens do. The aliens look very Kirby, but the line is way too thin, I think. It looks, like I said, Gil Kane, that thinner line, which is okay. I like Gil Kane, but it doesn't look like I would barely recognize this as Kirby if you had asked me. And then the foreground looks, I don't know, it just doesn't look typical of Kirby. Like maybe this is more Don Heck speaking. I don't know. Anything else I want to add? This panel is very like the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, I think cloth and the corner of elbows is one of the trademark places where you can find and recognize Kirby's art. Remember the way this weapon or whatever it is kind of unfurls on the page is very pop art. I feel like this panel could be extracted into a Roy Lichtenstein painting or something like that. Any final thoughts I have? Yeah, very 19. Okay, and then this panel also jumped out at me a lot. This just looks like so 1980s or Heavy Metal magazine. Something. This could be like from a 1984 issue of Heavy Metal. It's. I mean, look at these fingers. These do not look Kirby at all. That's why I'm thinking like this is like Gil Kane stuff. Mobius, kind of a shakier line. I liked it though. It just looks. I think Kirby was starting to recognize that there's a lot of different ways that he could send his art, and he plays around with it a lot. Kirby was a moving target. I feel like that's the thing with his art, is it was always changing. He was always trying to improve it and make it a little different, a little better. But he always adding like little knobs to things and as much technical, just to make it look complicated for no reason. Why use a standard gun when you can make it look more elaborate? Nothing really too remarkable in these pages, I don't think. See, to me, these don't look. I feel like this is more, at least with these characters, don't look that exciting to me. So this is where I'm tempted to think that Don Heck did more. But maybe 1963 Kirby was still hadn't quite. To me, like around 64, 65 is when he really starts to have mastered things and get the good inkers that would actually help his art look the best. But I just found this story strange because it's such a weird mix of good art, mediocre art, and art that's just way ahead of its time. I mean, look at the ink on this. It looks almost like Daredevil. Daredevil actually hadn't been introduced at this point in Marvel Comics, but It just looks grittier than Ant-Man. It's like almost by becoming Giant Man, he becomes a grittier figure. Okay, I guess that's pretty much all the panels that I wanted to kind of zone in on. I think the one that really stood out for me is that one, this one right here. Like, look at this shadow. It's like, why you don't need to do that, but it looks really cool. I think it adds like a darkness to these characters. And then that same one, this character, when we're looking over his shoulder, it just has like a depth and a darkness, and we're seeing things from this character's perspective in a way that we don't usually do with the villain. And at this point, he looks almost like somebody that we might have pity for, but then he becomes a villain. And the story is pretty, nothing special. It's just, I was really zoning in on the art. So, Tales to Astonish number 49, first appearance of Giant Man. A mess, and a beautiful mess. Has some wonderful, great cover, some great panels, some great attempts to get the inking right, but also just kind of some, nothing special panels in which it tells a story, but it's nothing too exciting. So yeah, I think I'm gonna take a look next at a Superman comic, but we'll see. Design Lab, be there.